Please. Am I on? I am on. All right. Folks, if I could have you start to gather around, we're going to get started right on 10 o'clock. We have our MIT professor that's expecting to join us via Zoom. Can you hear me over this noise okay? We're having a little technical issue up here. It's called data center background noise. Don't you love it? You gotta love it. Chris, come on over, guys. Let's get this thing started. I can't thank every one of you for being here enough. Can we turn that? We can't. You know, that's the thing. We get to turn this thing down for a minute while we talk. But if you're living a half mile to a mile away from a data center, this is what it sounds like. Who knows who's got property back there on Farm Road that's putting the foundation in that's still in Martin County just the other side. That's the kind of thing you're going to have on a 24/7 basis. Chris, you're up here with us, buddy. Come on up here and sit. Thank you. Good to see you. All right. I want to get this started at 10 o'clock. Where is Robin? Robin. All right. We're going to get started. We have one more speaker. She's around here somewhere. We'll get her up here in a minute. Please, while we say a prayer, can we take... We're going to use some divine intervention and turn this sound down. How's that? You can stop it, Cindy. Everybody give a big hand for our sound engineer today, Miss Cindy. Woo! No, those are actually data center sounds. Cindy, can you turn that off, please? Give me your mouse. Thank you very much. All right. Folks, if you'd rise for a second, I'd take off your hats. I'd like to say a quick prayer so we can get the Spirit moving with us while we're talking today. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for today. We thank you for the opportunities that exist. We thank you for the challenges that confront us. And we thank you for the bounty and the blessings that you have provided for us all. We thank you most for your grace that you shine upon us, not that we deserve it, but we thank you, and we hope that you'll walk with us on this path today as we look to protect our families and our neighbors and make for a safer, happier, and a better environment for us all. Amen. All right, flags this way, guys. Let's turn and face it. Please remain standing. We're going to say the Pledge of Allegiance real quick. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Amen. All right. Woo! Thank you for being here, everybody. I think the people are still going to be trickling in. We're not going to have a political rally today by any stretch of the imagination. What we're going to be giving you are the facts. I don't want you to take what I say or anyone else says as gospel. I want you to take it and think. I want you to look at what we are presenting. And if you agree with us that there is a potential of issue, help us work to convince the village that we want a moratorium. We are not unreasonable people. If you can show me where you can bring something into this community, even though we're in Martin County, technically, it still affects us. It affects the greater village of Indiantown. If you can show me that there are no real health and safety effects because you have ways now to abate what our expert is going to show you, we're with you. We want to work to get things done. 18-month timeout, no permits, no plans, no nothing until a good, strong citizen committee can be formed that we can work with the village to produce a new zoning classification for hyperscale data centers. And there is a difference you're going to find out today between a data center and a hyperscale data center. The village's code only handles buildings up to 500,000 square feet. Fox 606 is proposed for 2.2 million. You think there's a little bit difference when you're zoning things from 2.2 million to 500? They don't have the adequate code to handle it. And your health, safety, and welfare is at risk. That being said, we did an interview with the lady from Arizona. It was 26 minutes. We've cut it down to about 8.5. She's going to talk to you right now and explain to you what it's like living. She lived about a mile away. from a data center. And she's going to explain to you what it sounds like. So Cindy, if you would, please start that.
Fantastic. All right, folks, welcome. I would like to thank Miss Jennifer for being with us this evening. Jennifer, you're in Arizona, correct?
That is correct. Just
And
outside of Phoenix.
outside of Phoenix, and I think we found a video about the town you're in. Tell us what's going on. Why, why are we talking today? I mean, and thank you for being here. It's awesome.
Well, you're very welcome. I'm glad to be here and I'll help however I can. We live in a suburban town called Chandler, Arizona. And several years back, I want to say about 10 years now, they put in the Price Corridor, which is all data centers and more of the corporate type stuff. And when they built that, they started building these data centers. And at that time, no one really knew much about data centers. And they just kept promising us that it was going to bring lots of jobs. So, yay, we're excited about that. When in reality, once it's built, it doesn't take that many people to actually run the data centers. So that was kind of an inflated dream. And the thing that happened was they put up notices for the community about these data centers, but it was on the the road on the west side of these data centers where no one who lives in these neighborhoods next door ever go onto. So we missed, some meetings about it and where we could ask questions and that sort of thing. So we didn't understand fully what was going on until after the data centers were already built.
Are we wrong in being out in front of this problem? Is it of a magnitude that we're over exaggerating?
No, you're definitely not over exaggerating. And I wish I had been aware of it before they were actually built. The problem is the noise. People don't think about it, but these chillers run 24/7. And when you live in a warmer climate, like, Florida, Arizona, they're constantly running because they have to keep those servers cold. Um, and those chillers come with noise. Now, but there's different ways to measure those decibel levels.
Hmm.
So if you call with a noise complaint, Chandler PD will go out there with their instruments and they're like, nope, it's not above our decibels. But there's different thresholds.
Yeah.
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 I would say just even at a low decimal, if you're listening to that 24/7, 365 days a year, that's like having a bad neighbor that is
Mm.
playing loud music all the time. But you get a break from that because eventually they turn that off. But those data centers never stop.
Exactly. And it's funny you mentioned that. That's how I first came to realize there was an issue. I'm a pretty light sleeper anyway, but one night I'm sitting there and sometimes we can hear concerts over at Wild Horse Pass because it goes over the reservation. And then our neighborhood's like the first one. So it hits our neighborhood, but it's going to end. So no big deal. Well, I'm
Mhm.
laying in bed and I could hear sound reverberating off my walls. And I thought a neighbor's having a party. Okay, no big deal. One night, two nights. Okay, now they're partying a third night. It was 3 o'clock in the morning and I'm driving around trying to figure out where this raging party is. Turns out there is no raging party, but that's when I could hear the data center. And that's when I realized, oh my gosh, this is an all the time thing.
Like you said, you called on noise complaints and they went out and they said, well, it reads within the 65 decibel range at the
Mhm.
perimeter of the place, and 65 decibels is okay. Well, 65 decibels in a higher frequency will fade and drop quicker, so it doesn't go as far away from the perimeter. So it's really a pretty accurate reading. But when you get those low
Yes.
decibels, those will travel because they are a longer wavelength and they travel further. How far away were people experiencing this drone from these data centers? I mean, if you were what, a mile, 2 miles, 3 miles?
I was about almost exactly a mile away from it. Um, And it also depends on how the roads are set up, how the sound travels down your neighborhood. I know a lot of the roads that were east-west facing, so the sound had like a direct path. And I lived in a cul-de-sac, so it bounced off
Oh, wow.
the neighboring homes. So a lot of that comes into play too.
What would you say to the people that are listening to this conversation right now that are still on the fence as to whether or not they should trust their local experts with their municipal code versus your experiences?
Yep. So it's the constant noise and you're not able to sleep. And even if you're using, white noise or fans to kind of abate that noise, it doesn't always work. It's constantly there. And even when it's not, you think you still hear it, if that makes sense. But they do have to run the generators for periodic tests, and those are even louder. So even the people who couldn't hear it all the time, they would definitely hear it. And if you're not sleeping well, and you're living with this constant type of stress and noise, it does have physical ramifications such as higher blood pressure, stress, depression, all that sort of thing. So I know in the group that we had, there were some people that it hit harder than others. People with chronic illnesses seem to be more susceptible to it. And again, everyone's a little different. So how you react to it, how your body reacts to it is going to be different than your neighbors.
We've been telling people that there's about a 2.5 mile radius from the epicenter of one of these. Are we off on that, do you think? I mean, just I'm saying anecdotally, we don't, we're trying to put together the best
Yeah.
evidence. You've been there. Is 2.5 safe, or should we be talking less than that?
I would say 2 to 2.5. Again, it's going to depend on how many structures are there, how the sound flows. We also know that you can hear it during different times of the year, better or worse. Like in the summer, it doesn't seem to bother us as much, but we're reaching temperatures of 110 or higher. So our windows are closed. We have air conditioner units going. So there's other types of noise that drown it out. But during the winter time, when everybody's windows are open, we don't have the heater or air conditioning going. We don't even usually have fans going. It just pounds right through you.
Or is there anything else that you think that you would like to express to the group that's going to be watching this or to our elected officials?
Basically, for your community, it feels like a David and Goliath situation. But don't give up. Even the small voices can make a huge impact. So don't give up.
We are working to get, if you bring that, there you go. We're bringing our next speaker, his name onto the screen over here. And Stephen, can you hear us? You got him unmuted? We're working to get...
Yes, I can hear you.
There we go. Stephen, thank you so much for being here. We have a small but very meaningful crowd here this morning. These are the people that really, I think, are wanting to learn, and they're going to help spread the message through the rest of the community. Stephen, and correct me where I go wrong, but you have a list of degrees that we only have so much time, so I'm not going to go through them, but you are a postdoctoral student at Goethe in Frankfurt?
Yeah, that's right. That's right. So I'm a postdoctoral researcher at Goethe University, and I got my PhD at MIT, and I researched this topic. So I'm really happy to speak with you and hear about what is happening in Indiantown and where what the problem is and share some of my professional insights on how you might be able to redress the problems that you're facing.
Fantastic. Well, let's just start with this. I'll give you a quick lay of the land. Topographically, we're a rural community. The majority of the urban density sits within a 2.5 to 3 mile range of the epicenter of the data center. There are no real structures or obstructions to stop the infrasound and other sounds that would, it's open, flat Florida plain in between here for the most part. And they're planning on putting they're asking to put they can plan all they want. They're asking to put a 2.2 million square foot data center that they say will be a closed loop data center from what we can gather from the pre-application information. So that's basically the topography. I'm going to give it to you. And given what, I mean, you're a doctoral research student, and I'm talking at a kindergarten level. Take it from there and help everyone here understand what they can expect if we're unable to get this data center slowed down to a point that we can get code in place that will mitigate. And is there mitigation? So I give it to you.
Yeah, thank you so much for this opportunity to share some of my insights. So I have had the opportunity to speak to many different audiences around the world, including the United Nations, where they are developing policies to kind of think about the future expansion of cloud infrastructure, of data centers throughout the world, and the digital economy, this kind of the need to be online, to do economic activity, right? And how do we solve that from a practical standpoint? And so these are questions that I always am sort of confronted with. How do we do this in a way that doesn't harm a community? Or do we even need to do this at all? Or what benefit does a data center bring to a community? That's where the story starts. But before I get into that, I want to maybe share just a little bit with you about my research and how I got to where I am, and how my experiences in research kind of gave me the insights that might be relevant for you now. So hopefully you can see my screen, but I'm not sure what you see. So you should be able to see a slide where, do you see this?
Stephen, we have a group that's under some tents. We're a good 15, 20 feet away on a 32-inch sun glaring on it. So
okay, so we don't need this then. Anyway, so
what I will do is I'll take this Zoom meeting and I'll be able to replay it and hopefully play it back if we've done everything correct. No promises, but anyway, keep going.
Yeah. So my research is I did ethnographic research, and what that means is it's a kind of method that anthropologists use to understand technology, but also humans and the way that humans interact with technology. And so I spent time actually embedded in data centers, working inside of them to understand how they work. And I worked in different data centers throughout the world. So I spent some time in the Southwest of the United States. I spent some time in the Northeast at different data centers embedded as a kind of intern or worker. But I also spent time in the communities where these data centers actually end up. And that kind of gave me a unique perspective of what it's like inside and what it's like around the data center as well. And so, as I said, in the US, I have that experience. I also spent time in Puerto Rico looking at data centers there, in Iceland, in Singapore, and all of these different places tell a different story. But the story that comes again and again is this story of kind of misunderstanding of what a data center actually is, what it does, why it has the effects that it does, right, that we don't like. So, I mean, the best way to think of a data center is to think of a box filled with computers that are storing information for you, but also doing computation for you. So doing information processing for you, right? So it's doing these two things at once. And I think that it can be really confusing as to why are they building this in Indiantown? Is it going to help people in Indiantown store their data? The answer is with a very large exclamation point. No, because of the way that the cloud is designed, it is seldom that the data center near a community is actually directly servicing that community in terms of the computing services that you're using. So that's one misunderstanding to really kind of, I think, to address right away. And then I will also just kind of get into, I'm just going to skip ahead here to get into some of the impacts of these data centers. So it's a box filled with computers, and those computers, to do the calculation, to do the computation, to do the storage of your data, they are generating a lot of heat because they need electricity to run those calculations. And then the waste product of that, consuming that electricity, is heat. And so you have to remove that heat, right? So then that requires a cooling system. And there are many different kinds of cooling systems. It sounds like this data center has a closed loop cooling system. That means it's a water-based cooling system. So it's using water to carry away that heat. And when it's closed loop, that means that the water is recycled for a period of time. And it's not a forever period of time. So we'll just be 100% clear about that, because if you think about it, this water is at the temperature of like a bath, because these data centers are really hot. These computers are hot. So this is where bacteria grows. So you have to kind of cycle the water in some way, or you have to purify it, or you have to disinfect it with chemicals and other things. And so that's one thing to consider. So it's a big box. It's generating a lot of heat. It's using a lot of electricity, but it's also designed to be a kind of box that is destined not to fail. So basically, imagine if you have a backup plan. You have a backup plan for your backup plan for your backup plan for your backup plan. That is what a data center is. It is filled with what we call redundancy logics. And these redundancies come in the form of the diesel generators that you'll see outside of the data center once it's constructed, if it is constructed. But you see these diesel generators, and they're burning diesel because if the local power grid fails, those diesel generators are already on. So there will be no interruption of service. The data center will not fail. Because if it fails, it costs the company a lot of money, tens of thousands of dollars per minute in some cases. So they want to prevent it from failing at all costs. So they not only do they have a backup plan for the power, they have a backup plan for the water. They use even more water, and there's reserve water. They have a backup plan for the security. There's all these kinds of man traps where like you can't enter the data center and make it very far unless you have a key card. And if you try to without a key card, you'll get trapped because the actual facility itself is designed as like a cage for anyone who is not supposed to be there. So there are so many levels of this. And so as a result of all of this redundancy, there is so much waste. The data center is very wasteful by design because it's trying to guarantee a level of service that we have really come to expect. I mean, we get frustrated when we try to load a website and it takes a minute. We get frustrated when there's a service error or there's some kind of, it frustrates us. And the cost of that, of having off everything instantly at all times is, what we're talking about with data centers. So now that I've kind of like explained a little bit about how it works, I think it's important now to kind of think about the why. Like why does it pollute the environment? Why does it impact the environment in a negative way? And does it have to? So these are two really important questions. So depending on what cooling system you have, there will be different levels of noise that are associated with the data center, for example. So that's one, okay? So with a traditional cooling system, there is a kind of an air handler, air chiller unit that sits on top of the building. And on top of that building, it will, emit this sound, this kind of rattling sound, and it's a constant sound because the cloud doesn't shut down. The data center doesn't go to sleep, You can access anything online at all times, 24/7, 365, right? 365 days a year, 24/7. So the cost of that is that the noise never ends. The other source of noise are the diesel generators that will be used as backup power for the facility. And that's a very very loud, and sometimes it's louder than other times because they run tests to see if their backup system is actually working the way it's supposed to. So they run on the backup power as a kind of test. And anyone who lives near data centers knows this. There are times when it's even louder and they don't know why. Well, this is usually why. Now, are there ways to stop that noise? There are ways to insulate against the noise. You can require the company building the data center to use like sound attenuation techniques in the form of walls that reflect the noise. They're not that effective, but they are somewhat effective. You can also wrap these chillers in these thermal insulated blankets. These blankets that actually prevent or dampen the noise, but it doesn't work that well. But it is a measure that can be taken. So that's one example. I will also say that so noise pollution is an issue. You also have electricity usage. So depending on the power grid for Indiantown, you will see changes in supply and demand of electricity. That because the data center draws as much electricity as a small city, it probably will use more electricity than all of Indiantown. That's not something that I'm making up. It's a fact, and I'm happy to share some of these figures with folks after. But so the electricity supply issue might cause costs that you the resident will feel in the form of your price spikes for your electricity, for your energy costs, right? But in addition to that, there will also be impacts to air quality because these diesel generators that are running are going to emit a lot of pollution. And you will actually be able to directly experience that pollution. And depending on, it sounds like you're in a flat place where there's not a lot of wind or a lot of egress. So some of that pollution will just sit above the houses and you'll feel it and it'll affect your health. So those are some of the immediate negatives that come to mind.
Can I interject one second and ask
Please.
a question of you, Steve?
Yeah, please interject as you will.
Here, I want to make sure the crowd can hear too. We have one that's in the pipeline, the one that we're talking about, and there are two
Yep.
others that I'm going to say are better than strong rumor. We have some pretty verifiable information and close proximity as to where they would be located. And when you draw that 2.5 mile concentric ring around each one of those three, there's a neighborhood here called Booker Park that actually the center of all three of those rings kind of create a nice little Venn diagram in the middle of this neighborhood. Do the health effects from these things compound as they produce around you? Because I know Jennifer had several of them around her in Arizona. It wasn't just one.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I mean, I think what makes this both from as a scientist, what makes this really a challenging problem is that it's also variable in the sense of like the human body. Every human body has a different level of sensitivity to noise, to vibrations, to certain frequencies. Our ears are not all built the same way, right? So some of us are actually more sensitive, and in the cases where noise pollution related data centers that are out there and have been documented, there are some cases where there are members of the community who don't really experience the noise or aren't really affected by it. And that's because they are different, right? And so that makes it a little bit challenging in terms of being able to communicate like what is actually going on. But yes, if you are surrounded by these data centers, the air quality issue, yes, that's going to magnify that. If they're concentrated and clustered in a way, then the noise will also compound and also depending on, if there's three of them in a close kind of radius, then there will be fewer neighborhoods that can kind of escape the effects of the data center around them. So yeah.
Our urban core sits at 2.5 to 3 miles. I mean, Indianwood, Booker Park, Little Ranch, the density, we only have 6,000 rough, maybe 7 during season. And it's a small urban core that would be blanketed. Now, the infrasound, and I want to stop with this, and maybe we'll take some questions, and if not, you can move forward. But the infrasound below the audible level, there are health effects to that I've found documented cases. But the thing I'm learning more about is that it's a proximal type of effect. The closer you are to the data center, the more direct health impact there is. When you are listening to the sounds, it creates more of a psychological but it's psychologically born, not physically born, in that it keeps you awake at night. So the insomnia, and all of the other risks that go with that come with it. And then the infrasound, actually at close range, they're saying could be therapeutic. Chris, this would be something you might be interested in. One of our panelists today is a chiropractor by trade. The infrasound actually works on bone healing and things like that. But when it's at a concentrated range, and they do come from this, we're concerned about the lack of code and regulation that exists currently with our municipality. Is that something that we should have them look at?
Yeah, so I will say this regarding noise pollution and its kind of physiological effects on the human body. Arlene Bronsaft conducted one of the most important studies on this issue, and what she found in her examination of like how people who lived near airports, right, especially poor communities that were kind of where an airport was built and constructed and then, had these visible effects. So there was a before and an after, before the airport, after the airport. What she found in this study very conclusively was evidence that, the vibrations, so this is again kind of like an infrasound kind of thing, from all of the takeoff of the planes, had a kind of effect on the children and their ability to focus and learn. It had a visible effect in terms of blood pressure, so hypertension was one of the most kind of documented cases. But since then, there's been a number of studies that have documented other effects. As you said, some of it is psychological. It's just the psychological strain of hearing this constantly, a form of torture that kind of creates a sense of anxiousness, a sense of unsettledness, a sense of, nausea or whatever. But then there's actually physiological effects of being exposed to infrasound, so these subaudible frequencies that are more like vibrations, actually. So infrasound is actually a series of vibrations, and vibrations can affect your body, like directly. And as you said, they're interested in the way that these sub-bass frequencies can be, at certain sub-bass frequencies can be used for healing purposes or whatever, or it might be related to traditional healing practices, for example. However, there is also a lot of extensive research, military research, on infrasound as a weapon of war, right? Because it does actually affect the body. It can be very deleterious to the human body. In particular, the gastrointestinal tract, and so your sense of nausea that you can get from being really close to these things. I think that is absolutely well documented, and you could dispute that if somebody doubted you. There's plenty of studies that document this. So yes, so that's my long answer to your question.
Yeah, let's see. Is there anyone that has any questions for Steve up to this point? Because we only have him for a limited time. If you'd like to ask Steve a question, there's a microphone up here. If you'd come up here so he can hear you. Steve, if you can't hear the question, let me know and I'll repeat it, okay?
Okay, thank you.
Hi. So I know that you just mentioned that, or referred to the infrasound as a weapon of war. And I know that here in Indiantown we have a lot of veterans. Have you ever seen any studies that relate from post-traumatic stress from these sounds that could affect our veterans in a health and psychological way? I mean, I know we care about those guys a lot out here in Indiantown, and they're a very big part of our community. And we don't want to cause any more discomfort to them as they've already experienced, whether they be deployed or, that kind of thing. So we just want to make sure that we're taking care of our veterans out here.
Did you get that, Steve?
I got very little of it, so if
Okay.
you could just kind of restate it for me, that'd be great.
The question was, we have a lot of veterans here, and how
Yeah.
does the infrasound interact and affect, say, PTSD and tinnitus? These types of things. Have there been any studies done that shows that it has a greater effect, the infrasound, than just the droning sound 24/7?
I'm not aware of any study that's specific to PTSD and how it would trigger this. However, I think if you would ask any psychologist or psychiatrist, these sounds, these sub-bass sounds are actually the metric that's often used, in an infographic that I created and also in other comparisons that I've been seeing being argued by different scientists, is an Airbus taking off, right? There's a certain decibelic frequency, 79.4 or 80 or whatever it is, that's close to what the data center, the range of what the data center makes. But there's also not only a kind of a measure of loudness that is similar, but also the tone, right? So the frequency. So you can have something that's this loud, but depending on what the tone is, it affects your body differently. And the tone range is similar to these kinds of, these what you might hear in a battlefield, right? If ships going by, boom, explosions, stuff like this. And this could be very triggering to somebody who has a post-traumatic stress disorder. Now, I'm not a psychiatrist or psychologist, but I think that if you found one, they could easily attribute this, but there isn't a specific study that I'm aware of.
Great question. Anybody else? We have one more question back there and another real quick. And we're gonna get to our other panelists here pretty quick because they have other places to go to.
Repeat it to you.
Yeah. What is your question?
In a closed water cooling system,
Right.
when they treat that water with chemicals and so forth, and then they go to replace it, what happens to that wastewater? Where does it go?
Okay, Stephen, where does the wastewater go when that water has to be replaced? And my understanding is there's, in a closed loop system like that, there's about a 40% evaporative rate as well. You address that. Now, where does the wastewater go?
Yeah, so this is a really important question. I've seen a lot of variations to the answer to this. In some cases, the wastewater is dumped in the nearest wherever the municipal sewer is. In other cases, it is, as you said, there is some of it that is actually reclaimed through evaporation into the atmosphere through the very process of circulation, and that's just physics. So you can't really stop that. But the reality is, this is not very regulated. What data center companies can use to actually treat the water. So for a while, they were actually denying that they were adding anything to the water, but then the closed loop came as a kind of solution. Look, we are sustainable. We're not wasting water. We're recycling it. Well, how are you doing that? How are you doing that with water that is, the temperature close to 80 degrees, which is that's where bacteria thrive. You have to kill that bacteria if you want to continue to cycle the water, so you need chemicals to do that. You also need chemicals and filters, so you could use reverse osmosis to get the particles out of the source water. So in your case, it's kind of I'm imagining it's the watershed, this kind of swampy kind of water source. I'm not exactly sure what the source is, but I'm guessing that it might be this kind of source. And there might be a lot of sediments in there that have to be filtered out. So sometimes the water treatment the chemical formula is also about removing those sediments, because they can corrode the electronic equipment when they evaporate.
Okay,
so the answer is
anything else. It sounds good.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right. So I think it's in principle it's better than open loop, but in the practice, what are the chemicals they're using? Are there safe chemicals? And where's the regulation for that? Where's the negotiation? Where's the transparency?
In our code right here, unfortunately, it refers to the national state standards that we have. I'm going to have one more question, Steve. And before she asks your question, I would like to thank you again. Stephen came to us through Jennifer and worked with Jennifer and her crew. Sorry. I forgot, this one doesn't broadcasting. Stephen came to us through Jennifer, who you heard first, and her crew, and he has worked with people across the country to help educate people that want to get out and make a difference in their community. And I want to thank him and all of you again for being here before we get to this next question. And Stephen, if I could indulge on you, and it's okay to say no, but I'm going to email you and ask if you and I can't do a longer format Zoom call together and really put some substantive things together that I can post for everybody to go back and review at their leisure, because there's so much to know about this.
Yeah, I'd be really happy to do that.
You're awesome, man, and I promise we won't take advantage of your graciousness. Last question from the audience, and then we're going to let you go, Stephen. Thank you.
Thank you. This is fairly short. Just to expand on what you were saying about the water, can you direct an answer to how it might affect the communities surrounding us in terms of the water table, either upriver or downriver?
Yeah, what she was asking is, she wants to know what the effects of other communities are close by. In Florida, we have a underground aquifer, plus we also have a lot of table water that obviously things collect in and filter. The proposed site has a 4 to 6 foot surface water table on it, and we're also just adjacent to the St. Lucie Canal, which feeds into Lake Okeechobee, connects Lake Okeechobee to the Atlantic Ocean. So it's also a primary estuary and everything else in there. So we're concerned. So can you address that real quick for us?
Yeah. So I think you should be concerned, right? Because what we've seen with data centers in the past, especially in the Southwest, the big data center cluster that has taken root in Arizona, but now in Nevada and other places, is it seems kind of oxymoronic to have data centers that use a lot of water go to a desert that is in a state of drought, right? What is the future of that? So if they're willing to do that, right, which also signals something else, right? You're putting something here that's not actually meant to last, because eventually the water is going to run out. That means that you don't actually have a long-term investment in the community. That means that you're only thinking in the short term, and that is, I would be very kind of cautious about what their long-term plan is for this, for how much they can get out of this community in the time that they can. I would say, yeah, you should be concerned about the estuary, and you should be concerned about the aquifer. But I also think that it's really important to demand good kind of transparency. What is the water source? What is being treated? If the data center, if you can't stop the data center from coming, you can probably through your local government be able to at least force them into a level of transparency that they wouldn't experience elsewhere. And the case of Chandler with Jennifer is a really good example of how at the local level you can resist a data center and actually achieve something, even if it's imperfect. It's something.
Good. Steve, thank you again. We're about to run out of our free Zoom minutes for this conversation, but I may have to invest in a pro version of this just because the conversations on this are going to go for a while. Listen, thank you again for taking the time. We want to thank you, and I look forward to speaking to you again in the future at your convenience. And alles gut in Deutschland, mein Freund. Sehr gut.
Vielen Dank.
Guten Nacht, mein Freund.
Thank you. Take care and best of luck to you. And yeah, my office is open if you want further discussion and you have further questions. Thanks.
Thanks again. All right, Cindy, can you? Yeah, I'll use this one. I'm not going to be running around out there. If you can get Steve off the screen for us. All right, folks. We went a little long with Stephen, but there's so much information here, and I appreciate him keeping it at a level that, you know, makes sense to us and puts it into perspective. And we brought him on board because, you know, the things that we're talking about sound like science fiction, and that's part of the problem. Someone explained to me a long time ago, and by the way, I have a degree in computer science. I have 30 years within the industry. My wife and I were the second company in the United States to offer a cloud computing solution before it was even called cloud computing, and we sold our business and got out. And then we moved here to Indiantown for obvious reasons, and we're not going to let them take that away from us because I love the people here and I love this community, and I will not let that happen personally. So anyway, the reason that we brought him to you was to lend some credibility to this with a person of that caliber, to say not that, hey, we're going to go with pitchforks and torches and we're going to go burn down the village hall. That's not what we want. We're not Luddites. We all use the AI. We had to use AI in all of the data centers here to be able to communicate with him today to get a message out about how bad data centers are. I mean, we've used 50 gallons of water just sitting there, okay, from evaporation, okay? So we're not against it, but I'm not against the car either. And if I had a horse and buggy, I probably would have wanted that car. But I don't want the auto manufacturing plant 1.5 miles, 2 miles away from me. I moved here and you live here for a reason. And that is the important part. And that government of yours is there to protect that. And that's why you put them there. And we're going to help you hold them accountable. And we're going to help you put in place, with their willingness and their openness after what they've heard here today, to talk with us, to put a moratorium of 18 months in place. We're not saying take it and pack up and go. That's going to be a hard one to fight. You know, I've had conversations with people. You could be fighting Palantir. You're fighting Meta. You're fighting some really big names on this. But you know what? This is the United States of America. And we've got enough to divide us. Let this bring us together as a community. We can gather together on that. So that being said, I want to talk about the local ramifications that he's talked about them. You've heard Jennifer talk about them. I think you get the picture. We're going to talk more about them. But these two right here are going to help us understand how did we get to this point, and what can we do from a governmental standpoint. And I want to thank you both. Robin Kavanaugh with Martin Cartwright. I keep calling you Kavanaugh, and I knew I was going to do that. Today. Robin Cartwright, folks. I'm sorry. I'm terrible with names like that. I get it in my head and it sticks. Robin is with the Martin County Press, right? And you're doing some work with Jamin from Sunland over there. If you guys have not seen Sunland with these two in a podcast talking about things, you need to. 20 minutes goes in about 3. I mean, they gel. They can make it happen. Robin has the background to tell us where all of this has come from, and she's going to give you some specific insights. This young gentleman to my left right here is an up-and-coming political figure within the Martin County arena. His name is Chris Kavanaugh. Chris Collins. He's currently the mayor of Stewart. And I invited, just for the reference, I invited commissioners here from the county. I invited people from the village to join us. I got some resounding no's from all of them. I was told by one that I was barking up the wrong tree. So, that being said, I want to thank you for taking the shield off and coming out and just talking about an issue. So, who wants to start? Chris, you want to open us up? Well, I think everybody, let's start here, Chris. We, the people, versus the government. What can we do as people to bring the most positive effect to this with an outcome that's in our favor? And the government's outcome is still in our favor to a sense, but how do we make this work? What do we need to do?
So first, can you hear me? No. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Here, use this. We'll put that on our list next time.
I always trust wired. Wired over digital. So first off, I would say thank you for doing this and being here. You know, this is the way that you do this. Is rarely do communities get an opportunity before something gets approved to actually have any influence on what gets approved. So you taking the time, Eric, and energy to herd cats. You know, you've been in texting me, and I'm sure a lot of other people, and trying to have an opportunity for people to even have a sense of what's happening to their community is number one. So thank you for that. I made a few notes here to try to hit salient points. One is that, and I'm not being dramatic in saying this, there is a war for your community. There is, you know, driving in here, I'm in the city of Stuart, and it's easy to forget how perfect this is out here. You guys live in paradise. I'm jealous. I wish I could have cows, you know.
We could use some new politicos. Why don't you come live to Indiantown?
Yeah, we could bring Wawas, you know, we could,
Yes.
but you really do, you live in paradise. This is heaven, and it's going to take, from this point moving forward, I think you're getting a taste of, it's going to take intentional leadership and vigilance on your part to make sure that it stays what it is. As the rest of Florida, you know, dives into insanity with overdevelopment, more and more eyes are going to be on Indiantown. And this type of project, you know, this is the beginning of that. If you haven't picked up on that already, and I'm sure you have. So when I say war and I use terms like battle, it can seem a little bit hyperbolic, but there have already been calls, you know, by certain bloggers to make sure that to get this project over the finish line, that the right consultants are hired. And Robin Kavanaugh is not one of them. You know, and what that signals, you know, these people will speak.
Robin Kavanaugh.
Cartwright.
Yes, Cartwright.
Yeah, now it's done. Yeah. What that signals is, hey guys, don't be cheap. Make sure you spend the $100,000 on the right consultants that it's going to take from start to finish to make this happen. So, that being said, you are going to be the center of a propaganda war, and to some extent, it's already happening. And know that this is going to descend into sides, and you know, you're going to hear things like, you know, Eric and you guys, there's going to be a lot of gaslighting. You guys just don't understand. You're ignorant. You know, this is not bad. The government's got this under control. The sound's not going to be a problem, and they are going to pay from top to bottom traffic consultants, environmental consultants, consultants that are just consultants to consultants. A lot of money to say there's no gopher tortoises. You know, the water's going to be fine, the sound's going to be fine, and you guys are just crazy. You know, you're just not in my backyard people. And so know that this is not a far off thing. This meeting that you're having today is not too soon. This is right on time, because very soon this is going to be descending on your community, and have no, I'm trying to think how to say this. Don't underestimate the amount of money that will be spent and the resources that will be deployed through the TV news, through the newspaper, through local bloggers that are already saying these kind of things that it's just ignorant and you people don't understand how this works, and so I appreciate you bringing in experts far beyond anything that those consultants will have available to them already, to lay out with clarity what the reality of this is and what it will look
Let
like.
me ask you this: if we and there is a petition, if you all haven't seen Miss Linda back here, she has a petition for a citizen task force committee. We sit at a round table. If you go in here and look, there's no head of this movement. And again, I don't want you to take my word 100%. I want you to take what I'm giving you and learn it and digest it and know it yourself, because when you are challenged, I'm not going to be there all the time. Chris isn't going to be there. Linda's not going to be there. The people that are eating this stuff and understanding it, we can talk about it now because we've understood the impact and we took the time to learn. You have to do that too. So when you talk to others, you can talk to them not repeating talking points, but you have a comprehensive understanding of why. So please, I'm urging you, if you want to be on a citizen task force committee, either to do research, to speak publicly, to write letters to the editor, to do fundraising, we have a lot of different things we're going to have to do. But like Chris said, we have to stay focused on the target. Small steps at a time. And 1, 2, and 3 people, you can't keep expecting everybody else in the community to do this for you. We have to unite. And we have to invite those out there in a uniting way. We have enough division. We don't need any more. And if your leaders aren't going to unite you, get some new leaders.
Yeah, so I would say, to your point, shifting from, I think there's a good sense, I see heads nodding, that people understand the how important this is and what the implications are. In terms of actionable steps, like what do you do? How do you fix this? How do you hedge this? How do you be involved, right? One is continue this type of thing. I don't know if you have a list of people's names with emails and phone numbers to follow up, but you need to continue to be working together and meeting, not necessarily to, again, like you said, pitchforks and torches, and you're not trying to accomplish that. This is business, right? It is business for the other team. This is saving your home and making sure that your quality of life, it's business, that your interest is equally heard by your elected officials. It's business. So continue to be organized and involved in the process of this development application. With each update and step, there needs to be, all of you need to be working to get that information from your elected officials, from staff, constantly getting those updates so that you're in the know as much as you're allowed to be. In terms of war and battle and sides, the next layer would be if your elected officials are not echoing your concerns and your talking points publicly, not just when they come meet with you and tell you that you're absolutely right, but from the dais, if you're not hearing loudly your voice and your perspective being communicated, because that's my job. I'm supposed to represent you, right? So if what you're hearing is gaslighting, that you just don't understand how this works, it's not that bad, the water won't be a problem. If this is what you're hearing from your elected officials, you need to run for office. You need to do the unbearable thing. I am a chiropractor by trade. I do not want to be doing this, but I felt like there was nobody in my town that was representing. We had approved, and I'm going to give you this context for what you can do as well. The city had approved something like 3,000 apartments in 4 years in a community that had 17,000 people. That's roughly 5,000 new human beings coming from Delray in New York and Fort Lauderdale to come live in the city of Stuart. For me, this was untenable. I could not stomach this in my beautiful little town, my little beach community. You now have the opportunity to decide what is untenable for you, to the point of falling on the grenade of potentially getting involved in municipal government. And ideally, you have no ties. You have no developer friends. You're not involved, in the Chamber of Commerce and all the important people. And you're just a regular person that cares about your community. And the reason that it is important, and it's ultimately what will make the difference, you will not feel qualified, you will not feel like you should be, and that's exactly the kind of human being that should be involved. Moses in front of the burning bush argued with God that he was not eloquent. You're probably the exact person that should be involved. But with better leadership in the city, we went from approving 3,000 apartments in the 4 years prior to 60. We had a 98% reduction, by having just right people in seats. So that to say, you need to be involved and let this be the catalyst that makes you go, damn it, okay, I guess I got to do this. And step up, run for office, go door to door, especially if when you talk to your elected officials, you're not getting what you do. Not be deceived, do not be gaslit. Trust your gut. What you're feeling is the truth, even without all the details. You are right.
I'll go to that one for a second. The last council meeting, if you watch the pre-council meeting replay, you'll see that Wade Vos and I were having a discussion. Wade Vos is the village attorney. And one of the things I was discussing with him is our request for this 18-month moratorium, because we keep getting more resistance from him. I think it's going to take 18 months. But the thing I was discussing with him is we don't have the code. We don't appropriate. We can't deal with anything over 500,000 square feet. We don't have the appropriate code for the water, as Stephen was telling us. We don't have a lot of appropriate things. And we're not saying that we don't want it. We're saying that, hey, look, we're unique. I really don't want to be the first, because we would be the first in Florida to have a hyper-scale data center, and that's the important thing to remember. They're hyper-scale data centers. Our code does not allow. They have to bring that code to monitor that thing under control in their under 500,000 arena. That's what they're dealing with. They're dealing with sounds that they say, well, if it's only at this sound level at the perimeter, you're okay. They don't measure infrasound. They don't measure the water. There are no regulations. So we want a moratorium. Like Chris said, stay on them. Ask them to get the moratorium, which, back to Wade Vos, who told me, well, municipalities have been stopped by the state. They can't issue moratoriums anymore. And I thought that was kind of interesting, so I went and did some research. Do you know they have a moratorium on building right now because they don't have the capacity for their water plant to handle anymore, so they had to pass a moratorium? They do have the ability, so when they try to gaslight you, you have to know the truth as well, and that's what we're going to try to get out to you. So let's move over, if we can, real quick, and then I think we'll take some questions and some follow-up comments. But Robin, if you could talk to us a little bit. You and I were talking, and you said that the FPL property out here sold for what?
Yeah, so Robin Cartwright, not Kavanaugh, but I run the Save Martin County page on Facebook, and I write for Martin County Press. Jamin and I work hand in hand. He's with Sunland News, and so we've been doing a lot of research about what's happening out here. And just to give you a little background, I sued the city of Stuart and I won, so I'm fully aware of the gaslighting that can take place when there's an opportunity for somebody to make somebody an enemy of a project because they can't prove that they're right, so they have to prove that somebody else is wrong. So I just want to reiterate what our commissioner said, because it is true. They will make somebody an enemy for the purpose of, and it doesn't do anybody any good. It doesn't make them right. All it does is create a situation where now you're looking at something shiny over here and you're not paying attention to what's really happening over here. So the property in question was 8,000 acres and it was purchased in 2023 for an asking price of $93 million. And FPL bought that and nobody knew why. Nobody had any idea why. Well, fast forward to where we are and all of these things are happening, right? We've got 3 or 4 parcels, 3 or 4 projects where these projects are all coming up simultaneously, and I'm going to address that very specifically. But I want to give you some data and facts that you can use going forward, because it all sounds very large and you just can't comprehend what's happening because it's so much, right? Like all of this data and this water. So I want to give you some comparisons so you really understand what's happening, because what's happening in Indiantown affects all of Martin County. I'm a little sad that there are more people here from the city of Stuart, from Palm City, from Jensen Beach, because they will be as dramatically impacted as you are, just in different ways because of the water that's going to run off, the stormwater management, the lack of the ability of where we live, all of this space being covered to absorb any rain that happens, the increase in temperature that we're going to experience. So I hope that you will share with them what you've learned today and how you feel about things today, because we definitely need more people involved, because what happens here affects everywhere. So specific to water, Meta's data center in North Kansas City uses 9.5 million gallons of water per day. For comparison, the city of Stuart, 3.5 million gallons. So one data center, one city for comparison, 7 square miles, give or take. Martin County uses up to 9 million gallons per day. So the entire county of Martin County will use what the one data center for Meta does in North Kansas City right now. Water is currently permitted in a drought to be diverted for Big Sugar. We have to question, is this water going to be permitted to be used for the cooling of these data centers? Right now, we can't water our lawns in a lot of places. We're in a burn ban. Is the same thing going to happen with these data centers? Are we going to be restricted and held to a different standard than what somebody who's investing in our political fray is going to get? Even if they recycle and reclaim the water, the initial draw has to come from somewhere. So all of these touts that you hear that it's self-contained, they're able to, cool the system with their own, it won't affect anything. That is an untrue statement, because that water has to come from somewhere to begin with. And the aquifer that we keep hearing about, Terra-Lago had to have a moratorium on building because there's not enough water in the aquifer to even tamp down the construction dust. The aquifer is also affected not just by water usage, but by compression of the land. It dramatically affects the ability for the aquifer to recharge. So again, that gaslighting that you hear, oh, it'll be fine, it's all self-contained. We have to ask better questions and we have to get better answers. Regarding electricity, Goldman Sachs just put out a study where they're warning consumers that electricity prices without data center influence will go up 6% from 2026 to 2027 due to existing strain on the power grid. That's with what we have now, not with what's being proposed. In 2025, utility companies like FP&L requested $31 billion in rate increases. That is more than double what they requested in 2024. And then we hear the question, because there's a data center that's being proposed in St. Lucie County, they will generate their own power. So what does that mean for people who live in that community? There is no available data that they will be able to do that for themselves. There will still be a strain on the grid and it will still affect people around us. And then there was a conversation about, do they get priority if we have a major storm or hurricane that comes through? Who gets priority to be put back online? We already have the issue with firefighters, fire rescue, first responders that get priority, the hospitals get priority, and they should. Will we be put in a seat behind data centers because they are making better political contributions than we are? Again, things that haven't been answered yet. Regarding climate, record temperatures are already being reported this month. Less green space equals higher temperatures. There is a study out that says very specifically that data centers that have data centers in their neighborhood, they show an increase of 4 degrees Fahrenheit on average due to the heat emissions that take place. We heard the expert talk about how they run at such a high temperature. 4 degrees is a lot, and especially when you have 3 or 4 of them in one concentrated area, that creates a situation for agriculture and for farming. Again, things that nobody is discussing. There's a note about inflation, because I know that we're all feeling the crunch of gas prices and other things right now. The Federal Reserve Chair stated that data centers are contributing to inflation as they require a multitude of goods and services. And who pays for that? We do. So I want to talk about the applications and donations, because there was talk about land annexation and some other things. The land that was annexed into the village of Indiantown from the county had a tiny little caveat for an appropriate land use that doesn't exist for your other annexations, for data centers specifically.
Can I read it?
Yeah, go ahead.
It says right here, it says pending a problem. Owner applicant preparing and submitting a site plan application for, okay, FP&L has indicated the initial phase of the development would be to construct a substation. Subsequent phases of development may include, but not limited to, data processing, storage, hosting, and related services, information technology and related services, technology research and development and related services, power generation and energy storage and lithium batteries, solar electric power generation, electric substations, water and a wastewater facility. So what do you think they're looking at doing that? Folks, here's the reality of this. Somebody on a business development board got together and said, wouldn't Indiantown make just the shining emerald on the Treasure Coast for the technology hub of all of Florida, would be the great new technology center. They'll come from California. They'll come. Look, our comprehensive plan says what we want it to say. Rural, maintain the rural heritage. Someone has brought this way ahead of time. Chris, how often do you see things like this? This is a legal process that takes place through all of the municipalities. How often do you see something so explicitly picked out of available potentials? Why didn't they put strip mining or other potential industrial things on there? I mean, you can't speak for them, but is that regular?
It's a larger philosophical conversation around how should policy be developed, and ideally in a functional, representative republic, the people should drive their elected officials and representatives to steer policy. It should not come from larger oligarchical corporate outside interests through their commission and then driving policy. So this is
So I just want to address the land use and the annexation, because we're removing the responsibility from the Board of County Commissioners, and it's becoming the sole responsibility of the Village of Indiantown. It's easy for the commissioners to wipe their hands of this. But there is a reason that these annexations and these land development applications all come in at the same time. And I just want to make people very aware of this, because education is my thing. I need you to make sure you're registered to vote so you get the right people in office that represent you. When these land proposals come in, these land use changes and these annexations come in, you'll notice they come in all at the same time. And that is by design. And I want to explain this so there is no misunderstanding. Those land annexations and those development proposals come in because you cannot count something that does not have a certificate of occupancy against a pending project. So you will see simultaneously 3, 4, 5 applications from developers all come through at the same time. They'll have the same traffic consultants, they'll have the same environmental consultants, and all of this is intentional. Because if Chris has a development and I have a development, and we have the same consultants, we even have the same builder, and his is right across the street in catty corner from mine, I cannot be punished and I cannot be held accountable for what is happening with his development until there is a certificate of occupancy issued. Because technically the traffic doesn't exist. The infrastructure doesn't get impacted. The stormwater isn't impacted. So all of this is by design. So the fact that you're not seeing these applications in, except for the one annexation in that you've seen at this point, yet we know there are 2 and maybe 3 others that are going to happen, that are going to have applications. You're going to see them all come. I guarantee this. They're all going to come through at the same time, because your village commission cannot penalize a developer for something that is not existing. And we saw this in the city of Stuart, and that's why we had all of that rush, because a lot of people have invested into commissions at the local level, at the state level, and at the federal level, so that these things get approved by design. They're waiting for the right people to be in office to approve them.
Well, let's talk a little bit about that. And we said we weren't going to talk politics today.
I'm not mentioning names.
And I'm not going to mention names, but they are an elected official, and they have done nothing illegal. I want to stress that. Nothing illegal has taken place that we know of. However, $90,000, am I accurate on these numbers? $100,000 they've taken per year since they've been in office as a salary from the same consultant, a construction company rather, that is holding, court with your village hall, and the company's also their largest contributor. So that's why we have to be awake and looking when you hear someone tell you it's all good. Well, yeah, it's all good for you, Jack. It ain't good for me.
I'm not running for office, so I won't violate anything here. So I will just say, when the reports come out through the supervisor of election, through your village council, through the city of Stuart, whoever you feel like you need to pay attention to, please pay attention to who is donating to those candidates. There are groups of people that donate in partnership to support very specific people for very specific reasons. And so I would just advise you as we get closer, and you're welcome to reach out to me. I love to publish numbers. And so on the Save Martin County Facebook page last year, that was like my favorite thing to do. Like, who got a donation this week? Let's take a look. It was like a weird game. And so I would encourage you to make sure that you look to see who is donating to whom, see what industry with whom they're affiliated. I would also look to see what companies they work for and what PACs they're donating to, because PACs have different financial lack of restrictions, really, as to whom they can donate and when and how much. So a lot of times you'll see somebody donate to a PAC, which will donate to a political candidate so that they can donate more money. So there are a couple PACs in Martin County that are run. One is run specifically by a Board of County Commissioner at this point. We've also got a state representative who has a PAC, and those are, again, very intentional and by design. So I just want you to be educated and informed, so as we move forward through this process, that everybody understands exactly what's happening, why it's happening, and then you can make it a decision that is best for your community. And that's, I think, the most important thing here. Like Chris said, get involved. Whether you run for office or not, I think is up to you. But I think being an educated and informed voter, regardless of your level of involvement, is really the best thing that you can do for your community.
Awesome. I was told that we actually have one of the village council people here. Thank you. Appreciate that. They will be here for you to talk with after. And remember, we're asking for a moratorium, and there's a lot of reasons why. We're also asking if you will get involved with us, if you have some time that you can share with your neighbors. We have to put a watch group together, people that will watch, come together, talk about what we saw, and then be ready to report out to the greater body. We need people that are going to be there monetarily. We need people that are flying drones. Where's our drone pilot today? Where's that young lady that's flying the drone? Is she still here? She had to leave. All right. I think that she's running for Stewart Commission as well. But anyway, she came out to give us some aerial footage. I hope she's still here.
Even if a moratorium is framed as not possible because of SB 180, it is still very reasonable to ask your elected officials to be patient and make sure that this is really looked at and not be in a rush. You're going to see a rush from the other side to make this happen quickly. And even if a moratorium is or isn't possible, there should be a desire to your point, make sure the code can be updated to adequately handle data centers effectively. Because what ends up happening is your municipalities really get outclassed. This happened in the city of Stewart, as you have large, powerful developers that are leveraging influence from Tallahassee. There's a lot of money on the line for these projects. And even though your municipal staff is amazing, you end up completely outclassed. The amount of money that's being spent, the caliber of consultants and lawyers and all of the different people, you really get chewed up. You're outclassed in the negotiations.
Well, that's why we need a seat at the table. I mean, I'm hoping that the village council will say, look, we've heard enough from all of you. Put together a group of 2 or 3 people that can sit with our planners and go over some of these things. I
would say more than that. You really need to make sure that you are matching in your code and your land use the real issues that are arising with data centers. That's going to probably require your own consultants and your own people to come in and really study and take all of the available data and have the proper precautions.
Put together a pretty good body already, and I mean, a lot of people. Citrus County in Florida right now has put a moratorium on it for the purpose of going and reviewing it. They're not saying they don't want it, because the money that's being hung up, this is the reality, folks. The village of Indiantown is in financial constraints. They are hurting for money, yet they keep hiring people. I saw they were looking for 3 more people, including a park ranger, which doesn't make sense, but that's government. What do I know? They have to have them, I guess. But $2.3 million a year in salaries and $500,000 for a renovation of the village hall, when they don't have $36,000 for fireworks or $45,000 allowable to repurpose and fix the Black Cemetery, which is a national historical landmark here in Indiantown. With the heritage that we have, we should be upholding it. This is a gem. We are some of the luckiest people in the world. We live in the best nation on the planet, in the best state in this nation, and in one of the best places there is on the face of this earth. You know, I know my neighbors. I didn't know my neighbors when I lived in Rocky Point. I saw my neighbors. I know my neighbors. I like this place and I want to keep it. So I'm hoping y'all will help. Please, we're going to grow. We're going to get this message out there. Let's talk about the potential of 3, because we're being told that we have nothing but disinformation and misinformation, and that's the tactic that you were talking about earlier. They attack the messenger, they try to discredit you, and then they tie your discreditation to your message to try to make your message look like it's not right. He's a liar. He just wants to see everything blow up. He doesn't care. He's a divider. I'm not. We're trying to unite. We're using this process for unity. United we stand, man. We're indivisible. We can win anything. We can stop. I'm telling you, we can beat Meta. We can beat Google. Screw them. I don't care how much money they've got. We have something on our side. It's called a Constitution. And as long as we remember that, we'll be all right. Anyway, I'm getting off on it. But 3. We know there's 3. Back to the FP&L annex.
You said it wasn't going to be a political rally.
Woo! Well, that's just America, baby. That ain't political. The FP&L annex had in it itself the specific purpose. They spelled it out. It's like they wrote it for them. You've got 6,700 acres back there that they brought in, roughly, okay, round number. But what do you think they're going to do with it? Put a substation on it? They paid $95 million for it, 10 times rough over market value because you can't find comps. But they took agricultural land and turned it into industrial. 43% of the village is industrial land. You have 0 acres of agricultural land in a rural village. Something is out of balance. Not only the code to protect you, which was just yanked, the EPA is your protector of the water. You are going to rely upon the standards by the Environmental Protection Agency that has put standards in place on a blanket national level to protect your aquifer here. All right? The Florida Springs Institute gave us a letter, and they said not only is this the wrong place, this is the wrong place to be building a data center. So please stay involved. All right, guys, what else have we got on the agenda here? I don't want to keep people until 1 o'clock because I can't feed them, but... Question? Yeah, let's go to some questions from the crowd. Yes, sir. We've got a microphone up here if you want. Thank you again for being here, guys. Oh, yeah, sure.
I'm sorry, sir. I wanted to congratulate you on a really outstanding, informative performance, and thank Mayor Collins for coming out here. But my name's Chuck Wynn. I live in North River Shores, which is just over the Stewart City line, and I really think you gave some great advice about tracking websites, and you mentioned the Federal Department of Environmental Protection, but these data centers are going to require state environmental permitting, and I just got through going through a process that forced some friends of my county commissioner to pay $6,000. It didn't cost me a thing. I would say that I would give you this recommendation. Start learning the Florida Department of Environmental Protection environmental permitting and application process, and study their website and go to the Opus section of their website, and that will allow you to learn when they start applying for the environmental permitting for these things. And if the department grants them a permit, learn the process for appealing the decision of the Florida Department of Environmental Protection, because if you have a successful appeal, then it goes up to the Department of Administrative Hearings, and it goes before an administrative law judge, and you don't have to have an attorney to do that. And you could force them to spend thousands of dollars on an attorney, where all you're probably going to have to spend is maybe $100 or so for a few extra ink cartridges for your printer. So don't get discouraged if these people have deep-pocketed consultants. And another point that the mayor made was annexation. If you want to see the impacts of annexations, I moved here in late 2000, right after the city of Stuart annexed the land north of the bridge. Now, do you see all that congestion north of the bridge as you drive to Jensen Beach? That's what you could look like. I'm glad you quoted scripture. There's a saying in the Bible, without vision, the people perish. You need to start looking 10, 15, 20 years up the road from when your kids are going to, and consider what your kids are going to have to live with. But thank you for showing up, and thanks for doing this.
Yeah, there's a lot to unwrap there. The back end of all of this, folks, and I'm going to tell you this right now, and I said it at public speaking back on February the 12th, I think it was, at that meeting, and that is that I am in the process of strengthening our ability to file for injunctive relief after and if it does get approved, and the municipal codes have not been brought up to a standard that meets the safety guidelines that are required for not only us but our children and grandchildren to have to live through here. These are forever homes. We have five and six generations here of people. All right, I'm first generation, and I plan on passing mine along to somebody in my family and making it so that it has to do the same. You know, this is a heritage generational community, and it's going away fast. So, any other questions? Mr. Sunland, would you like to say a few things? You got some ideas? No? Because the reason go ahead, Kylie. This is our drone operator for the day, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you.
Say hi to Kylie.
My name is Kylie. I am running for Stuart City Commissioner. My one question is, this is a bill that I've heard, but I haven't sat down and actually read. I know that the governor has tried to make it so that the local municipalities can actually deny the data centers. How can we actually use that to benefit us in this situation?
Well, I'd like to know the statute.
I don't know the statute.
If you give me the statute number, I'll review it, and I'm happy to talk to you about it. But if there's any leverage that we can be given, I mean, 484 was enough that gave a lot of local control. And I think for the politicos, one, it's an election year in Village. Two of them are up for election, so you've got that in your favor, folks. We're out of the gate fast. That's the reality on this. The second thing for them is that they can actually, if they're smart politically, use this to their advantage to slow it down, to allow for a meaningful process for their citizens, which they represent, to get involved and help create a code that doesn't exist yet. Now, they can't go backwards and change the code that they have. The state won't let them do that. You can't make it any more restrictive than it already is, okay? There's some exceptions, but for the most part, they can't go back and change industrial to make it any more restrictive. So they can't change the sound. They can't. That's not industrial. That's over 500,000 square feet. That's 2.2 million. They don't have the law here to handle that. Does Stuart? Could Stuart handle it if somebody came in and said, I want to put a 2.2 million square foot data center on an open place in Stuart?
Yeah. I have to ask Commissioner Collins about
but
that specifically.
I'm asking all of the municipalities and the county especially, is the county code up to standard that it can handle it? If we're finding deficiencies here, I'm going to say no, because ours is newer than theirs and we took ours from them.
It is happening so fast, and I just want to address Mr. Wynn's comment about the Division of Administrative Hearing. You can also go on the South Florida Water Management District permit website, and you can set up to get noticed anytime somebody applies for something specifically, so that if there's a permit that comes through by a specific company for a specific parcel, you can get email notifications for that, like you can with the state EPA and federal EPA. But I want to just quickly address, there was an article on PBS yesterday about the White House released a statement, and I wrote it down because I was a little concerned, that they said that the White House is reporting that Congress should, quote, preempt state AI laws that it views as too burdensome. So there's two fronts to this potential fight, right? So we've got what's happening at the state level, which was referenced that it goes through the Division of Administrative Hearing. That is a legal court proceeding where you do get represented, and you do have an administrative law judge. There's no jury. They hear it. Intensities for any project in the state of Florida are supposed to be based on absolute maximum density, worst case scenario. That's how they're supposed to approve projects. And so the Division of Administrative Hearing, the law judges do a really good job looking at, was that provided? Were you given that as the potential? So when these applications come through, if your commission, your Village of Indiantown Council, is not looking at something and saying, is this the maximum density that could occur for this 2.2 million square feet? What is the maximum that could take place? Because land use drives what you can do on that land. Your council needs to provide to you, could it be worse? Could it be bigger? Could that space allow for that? And then it goes through the legal process of the administrative law judge, which then goes to the Florida Cabinet for review. The governor and the cabinet review every administrative law judge hearing, and they decide if they affirm it or if they deny it. In my case against the city of Stuart, I won my case. Our governor took a $100,000 donation to his PAC and overturned my case. So there's a lot of nuance within that. We could have gone to the 4th District Court of Appeals, and that costs more money for people. And I'm not saying that to dissuade you from fighting. I'm just making you aware that it is a process, and it is not a quick process. It takes time. It is not something that you can just be like, hey, I'd like to have a law judge hear my case tomorrow.
And that plays in our favor, I think, because every day that they don't get to crank out their digits, look, I'm not against
And
it.
it's an education, but it's also an education opportunity for your community, because every day that you have is another chance for people to learn. This is why it's being fought, because these things have not been decided, because they've not been well defined, and it's a chance for your community, our community, to really be better informed about what's happening, and a chance to educate your council members, because they should know what the overall impact is. If it's not sustainable, it should never be considered.
Yeah, the current zoning does not handle. It's clear. You can read it, knowing the science. I urge you to look at it if you want it. It's on talkaboutmartin.com. You click on data center. There are a ton of articles and things up there. Let's finish with Kylie here. What are we?
I do apologize. It's SB 484 that DC has put in
484.
place.
That actually returns. It hasn't been signed yet. Okay, it's passed the House. It's passed the Senate. It did take some revisions. I haven't read the final revision, but my understanding is one of the key provisions that relates back to us is still in there, which gives local municipalities the ability to explicitly create a moratorium for the purpose of finding out what's going on. I will be in touch with John Snyder and with Mr. Oberdorf and Ms. Gail Harrell, who is our state senator. Once they get out of session, I'm going to give them a week to go do whatever they do to freshen up, and then I'm going to have meetings with them coming up as well to address this. We need state level representation at this point for the aquifer. Brian Mast needs to get out here and talk about the cleanup of Lake Okeechobee. You want to keep all the runoffs and pollutants out of there, Mr. Mast? Here's your opportunity to help keep the river clean. Where are you at, Congressman? You're not here today. The rest of our state legislators delegation are up in Tallahassee still doing our services. So I love getting on soapboxes, man. You don't want me on one of your podcasts. That's why I like your podcast, because you guys can take 2 hours and put it in 20 minutes, and it flows like 3. Say hi to the folks.
Good morning, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Jamin Brown. I'm the founder of Sunland News, started right in St. Lucie County. The idea was, covering things like this, community news that probably wouldn't get covered otherwise. I do want to shed a little bit on the Senate Bill 484.
Yes, sir.
It's going back to the House to be voted on, but something that was stripped out of it, which is, I think, the reason why it was presented in the first place, was the fact that it would be public disclosure. NDAs that could not be signed by the AI data center people. That's no longer in there. So the transparency that, we once were hoping for is no longer in that bill, but,
Explain that a little bit to him. And this is where that attorney and the county commissioner come into play. The Meta signs an NDA. Who do they sign the NDA with?
Well, typically what happens when these things get proposed, they claim that there's a lot of proprietary information that has to be disclosed with the local municipalities, so they don't want to give that information up to competitors. So they sign NDAs to sort of keep things hush-hush. They sign NDAs so to keep things hush-hush. But what that doesn't allow us to do is to see who actually is coming into town, to fight against it, to prepare for it, etc. So this bill was hopefully the hope was that people have to disclose who they are prior to coming into, say, Indiantown, Meta, Palantir, whoever. But now that's no longer the case. So
and that's important for 2 reasons. And I'm going to take the acronym NDA for those that
might not know, I don't want to talk down to anybody, but that stands for a non-disclosure agreement. They have to sign it. They say, you can't disclose for 1 year who we are or why we're coming in. Now, here's another concern, and this one's a little bit further down the chain, but it's something you need to consider. If the federal government gets involved in any one of these 3 data centers that are on the radar right now, and it's Palantir that comes in, it's the federal government that puts something out here, your local control just went to hell. You have none. The federal government, if you want to put a building over there and they say you can't put it there because it's in a line of sight that we need, they won't let you put it there. Okay? When you then become a larger national security threat as well, the good name game of the day is take out data centers with AI drones. Don't want them. Don't need them. And then, real quick, and we're going to let you guys go unless you got more questions because we're flooding you with stuff. Talkaboutmartin.com, okay, is where you can find out more. That's where we're putting this information. It's a separate website so that if Facebook tries to take us down because we get too strong, you won't lose us. We're on talkaboutmartin.com.
If I could say one more thing.
Sure, sure.
Now get out
sure.
the way. I just want to.
Get out of the way.
Okay. I just wanted to say, I know we all wish there was more people here. I also want to say too, many great things happen with a small group of people in small rooms. So I want to just keep encouraging people just to show up no matter how many people come out. And I want to end that with saying Jesus only had 12 and he got a lot done.
Amen.
So there you go.
Amen. All right, guys, it begins with you. It begins with
Before
you.
you leave, Jamin and I would like to invite anybody who's willing to make a comment on or off camera, on or off the record. We've been reporting about data centers on our podcast and in our writings, and we want to help share your story and help make Martin County the best it can be. So if anybody's interested in participating, I believe you set up room inside.
Yeah, there's a couple of rooms in there that we can use. Folks, there's refreshments, water, and a restroom too. Let's not all try to use it at the same time, but there's 2. One last thing that I'm going to just bullet point for you. These data centers, as you heard our doctors say, have a lot of lithium batteries in them. FP&L's document said they want to do battery power storage. Those are lithium batteries. Have you ever seen a Tesla on fire and a fire truck trying to put it out and how long it burns? They will say that they have fire suppression, and they will. But remember the word, it is suppression. It is only supposed to suppress the fire for a certain amount of time until the proper authorities with the proper amount of people and the proper equipment show up to put out a fire in a 2.2 million square foot building that, as the MIT professor said, is a maze and a labyrinth, and if you don't open the door the right way, Maxwell Smart's going to get you, and the cone of silence is going to fall on you, and you're not going to get out. You want to be a fire person going in there and worrying about that while a 2.2 million square foot building is on fire, spewing lithium battery pollutants into the air and covering us? That's just one of the risks that we stand. So where is our protection? Ask for the moratorium, guys. I love you all. Thank you for being here. You don't have to run away. Stick around. Let's talk. You're great people. There's more. So you guys got anything to add? Chris, you want to add? Close on something? If you want to run for office, talk to somebody up here. There's plenty of people that will help you. You're not alone.
You're not allowed.
Right on. Right on. All right, guys. Drive fast. Take chances.